Okay, so in this video I'm going to teach you a little bit about vacuum testing. This is a chart I made a few years back. So we're going to look at a few things before we actually go do the test. First of all, here's what normal should be. And this is based on our elevation being at sea level. Okay, so you can see that we should have a nice steady reading between 17 and 22 inches mercury at idle. And then with a steady acceleration, you should see it kind of go down and hold steady between 2 and 5. And then at wide open throttle, you should see it go to 0. And then at deceleration, you should see the vacuum spike up above our normal reading and then settle back down to where we were at idle. Okay, some things to keep in mind though. Here's some things we might run into that will be useful for a diagnostic. Okay, number one, if you see low idle vacuum, then we could be dealing with a valve timing issue, maybe some low compression, worn rings, or the most likely cause, some sort of a vacuum leak. If you see vacuum decreases steadily at idle, just kind of slowly goes down, we're probably looking at an excessive back pressure issue, some type of like a restricted catalytic converter or muffler. Okay, if our needle is vibrating at all engine speeds, then we could be looking at weak valve springs, worn valve stem guides, leaking cylinder head gasket. If the vacuum sharply drops intermittently at idle while you're watching it sit, and then it just drops down and comes back, then you might have a burnt valve or an improper valve clearance. If the needle vibrates at idle, but it smooths out when you increase your engine speed, we're looking at worn valve guides. And if your vacuum intermittently fluctuates, we might be having a misfire or sticking valves. Okay, so this is just a really good chart. You could find other things like this online. But now we're gonna go actually do a vacuum test and we'll see what this car that we're working on looks like. Okay, so now we're here measuring vacuum on this 2003 Chevy Cavalier. There is a vacuum access port right here on the intake manifold that we've undone and we've tapped into with our vacuum gauge. Okay, we are at 4,500 feet above sea level here, so our idle specification is a little bit different than the chart. We're going to be somewhere between 13 and 18 inches of mercury. As you can see here, that's about right where we are. So as far as level goes, it looks good. However, our needle should not be oscillating like it is. Makes me think there must be something wrong with the valves. Okay, but we want to kind of rule out valve guides, and if you remember from the chart, if we rev the engine a little bit and it smooths out, we prove that it's valve guides. If it vibrates at all speeds, something with valves, valve springs, something like that. So here we go, we're going to rev the engine up. Okay, so we're definitely not dealing with valve guides here. Something is wrong with valve springs or valves. There's no complaints from the customers so far, but I think we're definitely seeing the beginnings of something here. A lot of people underestimate what you can do with a vacuum gauge, but there's quite a bit of diagnostic information that can be seen by simply tapping into a vacuum line.